The director's hand was shaking when he picked up the phone. Day 17 of production. Warren Beatty had just rewritten an entire scene without permission, changed the blocking, altered dialogue, made the crew wait 3 hours while he figured out what he wanted. The director had enough. He dialed the studio head. "I want Warren Beatty off this film." Silence on the other end. "Did you hear me? I want him replaced. Today." The studio head's voice was careful, measured. "Have you talked to your wife about this?" The director froze. "What does my wife have to do with?" "Call her first, then call me back." The line went dead. The director sat there for a long time. Then he remembered, 3 years ago, before they were married, his wife had dated Warren Beatty for 8 months. He never called the studio back. That's when Hollywood realized Warren Beatty didn't just date women. He built insurance policies that lasted longer than the relationships. If you understand why the past is more powerful than the present when it's with the right person, you're in the right place. This isn't about Warren Beatty the womanizer. This is about Warren Beatty the strategist, who understood that in Hollywood, every relationship is permanent, even when it ends. Because in 1978, during the production of a major studio film, Beatty didn't just survive being fired. He made firing him possible by being connected to the one person the director couldn't afford to upset. To understand how that worked, you need to understand how film sets actually operate. The director has absolute authority. On set, the director is king. They hire, they fire, they make every creative decision. Actors who don't listen get replaced. Stars who cause problems get written out. This is non-negotiable. Every union contract, every studio policy, every tradition in filmmaking supports this hierarchy. The director controls the set, period, except when they don't. Warren Beatty arrived on set, the first day of production, knowing something no one else knew. He was untouchable, not because of his contract, not because of his box office numbers, not because of his agent's power, because 3 years ago, he'd spent 8 months with the director's wife. Before she was the director's wife, when she was a rising actress trying to figure out who she was. They'd broken up amicably, stayed friends, she'd moved on, met the director, fell in love, got married. Normal Hollywood story. Except Beatty understood something most people miss. You never stop mattering to people who once loved you, especially if you treated them well. The director knew about Beatty. His wife had been honest. It was in the past. Ancient history. Nothing to worry about. But on day 3 of production, something happened that made the director realize the past wasn't as past as he thought. There was a scene. Beatty didn't like the blocking, told the director it didn't work. The director, asserting authority, said, "We're shooting it as written." Beatty smiled. "Let me try something different. Just one take." "No, we're moving on." Beatty nodded, said nothing, pulled out his phone, and made a call. 30 seconds. That's all. 20 minutes later, the director's phone rang. His wife. "Hey honey, how's the shoot going?" "Fine, we're in the middle of something. I just talked to Warren. He said you two are having creative differences." The director felt his stomach drop. "It's nothing. Just normal set stuff." He seemed upset. "I told him you're a great director, that you'd figure it out together." "Right, yes, we'll figure it out." "Good. I'd hate for this to become a thing. Warren's important to me. You know that." She hung up. The director stood there holding the phone. "Important to me." Present tense. Not was important, is important. He called the crew back. "Let's try Warren's version, just to see." Beatty's version worked better. Everyone saw it. They used his blocking. The director never asserted authority over Beatty again. This happened again on day 9. Beatty wanted to rewrite dialogue. The director said no. Beatty made a call. The director's wife called 30 minutes later, asking about Warren, hoping everything was okay on set. The dialogue got rewritten. Day 12. Beatty wanted an extra day to rehearse a complex scene. The director said impossible. Schedule was tight. Budget was tighter. Beatty made a call. The director's wife called an hour later. She'd heard Warren was worried about a scene. Was everything all right? Maybe they should take the time to get it right. They got the extra day. The pattern became clear to everyone on set. Beatty would push for something. The director would resist. Beatty would make a call. The director's wife would call. The director would give Beatty what he wanted. The crew started calling it the phone call play. Everyone knew. No one discussed it. But everyone understood who actually controlled the production. The director was trapped. He couldn't fire Beatty without explaining to his wife why he fired someone she cared about. Couldn't complain to the studio without admitting he'd lost control of his own set. Couldn't even be angry about it, because being angry meant acknowledging the situation existed. So he did the only thing he could do. He pretended Beatty's ideas were collaborative decisions. He framed every concession as directorial choice. He took credit for Beatty's changes and acted like everything was going according to plan. The studio never knew there was a problem. The producers thought the director and Beatty had great creative chemistry. The cast assumed this was just how big stars worked. Only the crew understood the truth. And the crew never talked. By week 4, something extraordinary had happened on that set. Beatty was directing his own scene, not officially, not openly, but functionally. He'd suggest camera angles, the DP would implement them. He'd adjust lighting. The gaffer would make it happen. He'd reblock entire scenes. The AD would update the shot list. The director would watch. Sometimes he'd offer input. Usually he'd just nod and say, "Great instinct, Warren." What choice did he have? Other actors on the film noticed. Started coming to Beatty with questions about their scenes. Started asking his opinion on line delivery. Started treating him like a second director. And Beatty, to his credit, never overplayed it. Never embarrassed the director. Never made it obvious. He'd frame his suggestions carefully. What if we tried? Maybe we could, just an idea. But he let the director save face, while taking all the real control. Because Beatty understood something crucial. Humiliating someone is temporary power. Letting them maintain dignity while you control everything is permanent power. The director could go home every night and tell his wife the shoot was going great. His vision was being realized. Studio was happy. And his wife would smile and tell him she was proud. And maybe mention that Warren had called to say how much he was enjoying working with such a talented director. And the director would thank her. And never, ever mention what was actually happening on set. Because what would he say? That his authority was undermined by his wife's ex-boyfriend. That he couldn't control his own film. That every time he tried to assert himself, his marriage became collateral. The silence was mandatory. And the silence was what gave Beatty complete freedom. Here's what made this different from traditional power plays. Beatty never threatened anyone. Never said, "Do this, or I'll call your wife." Never leveraged the relationship explicitly. He just made one call per disagreement. To his ex. To his friend. To someone he genuinely cared about. "Hey, the director and I are having creative differences. Just wanted you to know it might affect the schedule." That's all he'd say. No manipulation. No demands. Just information. And she'd call her husband. Not because Beatty asked her to, because she cared about both of them, because she wanted the film to succeed, because she hoped they could work it out. Her intentions were pure. Her effect was absolute. The director couldn't be angry at his wife. She was trying to help. Couldn't be angry at Beatty. He was just communicating honestly. Couldn't be angry at anyone, except himself, for being in a situation where his professional authority was accidentally undermined by his personal life. By week 7, the director stopped fighting, stopped pretending he was in control. Just let Beatty shape the film the way Beatty wanted. And here's what's fascinating. The film got better. Beatty's instincts were sharp. His changes were improvements. His reblocking made scenes tighter. His dialogue rewrites felt more natural. His camera suggestions created better compositions. The director, despite everything, had to admit Beatty was making a better film than he would have made alone. That's the cruelest part of the whole situation. The director lost control, and the film benefited from it. The movie wrapped in October, came in under budget despite all the changes. The studio was thrilled. The director took credit for the collaboration, did interviews about his vision, his creative choices, his bold decisions. Beatty said nothing publicly, gave the director full credit, praised his leadership in interviews. But everyone who worked on that film knew the truth. And in Hollywood, what crews know eventually becomes what everyone knows. The story spread quietly. Warren Beatty directed a film by dating the director's wife years before the film existed. Other directors started asking questions before casting Beatty. Who's in his past that might be in my present? Studios started doing relationship audits. Not officially, not openly, but quietly checking if their director had any connections to Beatty's romantic history. Because firing Warren Beatty wasn't just about the actor anymore. It was about who might call if you jeered. And here's the moment that revealed how deep this power went. 2 years later, a different director wanted to work with Beatty. Big project, prestige piece. But the director had a concern. He called Beatty's agent. "I need to know if Warren dated my wife." The agent paused. "When were you married?" 2003. "Let me check." The agent called back an hour later. "You're clear." The director exhaled. "Thank God. But Warren did date your sister-in-law in 1999. The director's blood went cold. His wife's sister, his kid's favorite aunt. He passed on the project. Warren Beatty created a power structure that didn't depend on him doing anything, just him having done something years ago with someone who mattered to someone who could hurt him now. The relationships were real, the feelings were genuine, the friendships lasted. But the effect was strategic. Whether he intended it or not, Beatty had built a network of protection that activated automatically whenever someone tried to remove him from power. He wasn't manipulating anyone. He was just connected to everyone in ways that made removing him more complicated than keeping him. By 1982, Warren Beatty wasn't Hollywood's biggest star. He wasn't its highest-paid actor. He wasn't even its most sought-after talent. But he was its most protected artist. Because protection doesn't come from power. It comes from proximity to people who have power over the people trying to use power against you. And that's a level of control most people never understand exists. Warren Beatty understood something most people miss about relationships and power. The relationship ending doesn't end the connection. Especially if you treated them well. Especially if you remained friends. Especially if they genuinely care about you even though they've moved on. That care becomes leverage you never have to activate, because other people activate it for you by being uncomfortable with hurting someone who someone they love cares about. So here's the question. In an industry where everyone tries to control everything through contracts and threats and lawyers, what happens when someone controls everything through relationships that ended years ago? When your past becomes other people's present in ways that make your present untouchable, when you don't have to fight for power, because the people who love the people trying to fight for you without being asked. If that's the kind of power that interests you, the kind that doesn't announce itself, doesn't threaten, doesn't even need to be activated because its existence is protection enough, consider subscribing. We explore how real control works. Not the version where you dominate people, the version where you're so connected to so many people that removing you means dealing with consequences from directions you can't predict or prepare for.